everyone. Welcome to the MTG Homerow Podcast. This is episode 2 of the MTG Homerow Podcast. And today we're going to do a short impromptu podcast episode. On Friday, they announced viewer-submitted decks. Submissions are open on Commnader Clash, and the deadline is on the Tuesday after the video airs. So it's just a few days. I feel like in the past it's maybe been a week or maybe 2 weeks even. Just a few days. This time, though, it's now Saturday. So just over 24 hours from when I watched the episode. And this is the deck that came up with collaborative effort with some friends. My newfound magic friend, Tom, and MTG helped me with the deck. So I think this is it. So I'm going to record this quick podcast episode that can hopefully serve as a way for maybe the crew to quickly get a glance at the deck without having to do all the reading and guesswork. So I'm just going to go over the primer on mtggoldfish.com right now. This deck idea has been in my head for a while for viewer submitted week. So I think this is it. Skullwinder Tribal. Tom is back, so the original proponent for Skullwinder on the show, and of course Secret Rendezvous are the inspiration for the deck. So I'm not going to go as in-depth as I normally would in a podcast episode because I want to keep it brief, and the people who are potentially choosing this deck I think know what the cards do. Otherwise, I'd be more motivated to read cards out and really go through things. But the idea for the deck is Skullwinder Tribal do things like Skullwinder and Secret Rendezvous to see if we can create enough value and political fun times to win the game. So other Skullwinder and Secret Rendezvous type effects are Veteran Explorer. When it dies, each player may search their library for up to 2 basic land cards. So we are running some basic lands in our 5-color deck. There's 1 of each and 2 planes since we're heavier on the white. Garth One Eye is the commander. I just wanted to have all the colors available, and it does interesting things. I think it's versatile, so we're trying to do some pretty janky stuff, and we're letting other people do all sorts of things. So hopefully Garth gives us a little bit of value when we need it. Flumph is pretty hilarious. When Flumph is dealt damage, you and target opponent each draw a card. I feel like that's very on theme. I don't know another deck that would play Humble Defector, and I've been wanting to see this card in play. You can tap it to draw 2 cards, and then target opponent gains control of Humble Defector. So that's pretty interesting, I think. Lorn of the Third Path does very Secret Rendezvous-ish type things. Knowledge is power. And then your temple is under attack, of course. The modular modal Secret Rendezvous type effect, but also lets us keep our creatures around with indestructible. Mathis Fiendfinder puts bounty counters on creatures. When they die, each opponent draws a card and gains 2 life, so it can be a little incentive for opponents to target threats that we identify. Skullwinder, of course, in here. Secret Rendezvous, of course, in here. Avatar of Growth is an interesting one. Another reason to run some basics. So costs 1 less to cast for each opponent you have. So it can be just 3 mana for a 4/4 trample. When it enters the battlefield, each player searches their library for up to 2 basic land cards, puts them onto the battlefield, then shuffles. So that could be a really big rising tide for the whole game. For everyone, as long as everybody's got basics, and we do have enough basics to do it twice. There's then Scheming Symmetry and Wishclaw Talisman, which I think are pretty on theme. Intellectual Offering is like a gigantic version of Secret Rendezvous. Still only 3 cards, but you do get to untap all non-land permanents you control and the other player that you choose, or just any opponent. You can choose an opponent for each. I don't think it has to be the same. Then choose an opponent, untap all non-land permanents you control and all non-land permanents that player controls. So you could save someone's life or use someone else's resources potentially to take out a threatening player, an arch enemy or something like that. Coveted Jewel is in here. When Coveted Jewel enters the battlefield, draw 3 cards, tap it to add 3 mana of any one color. Whenever one or more creatures an opponent controls attack you and aren't blocked, that player draws 3 cards and gains control of Coveted Jewel and tap it. There might be a couple ways to blink it. We'll see. And then Love Song of Night and Day, the jankiest of Secret Rendezvous effects. 3 mana saga with read ahead. The first chapter is you and target opponent each draw 2 cards, and then you make a bird. So it's just the most Richard card. In lieu of Richard, we're going to play as many Secret Rendezvous effects as we can and make as many bird tokens, just kidding, as we can, and then put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. So that last mode is going to transition nicely into our win condition. The win condition I'm including in this deck is the Infinite Goat combo. So with Clackbridge Troll, Luminous Broodmoth, Solemnity, and a free sack outlet, you can make infinite goats, give your opponents infinite goats. This is sort of a leftover from a deck that I was dreaming up where you force opponents to block with all their creatures. That'll come up later. There's a remnant of that in this deck. Making your opponent's block archetype is not quite supported enough yet, but we'll see what 2023 brings. But I feel that this is along the same lines as Skullwinding and Secret Rendezvousing, giving your opponents stuff. So we lean into that a little bit. The Hunted Phantasm gives the most small creatures. Slaughter Specialist gives on enter the battlefield. Hungry Lynx and Goblin Spymaster give every turn, and the Goblin Spymaster shakes things up quite a lot by saying creatures you control attack each combat if able, with the token that they're given. And then Mathis and the Meat Hook Massacre are going to give us some more payoffs for the creatures dying, but Massacre Worm's going to let us win the game on the spot if we can have all these pieces going at the same time. Seth has a video where he demonstrates this on Arena in a 1v1 game, so I'm not counting on only that. We're going to have some other synergies with Solemnity. There's Dark Depths and Thing in the Ice in the deck. So with Solemnity on the battlefield, Dark Depths enters the battlefield, has no ice counters on it, and you have a 20/20 avatar creature with flying and indestructible. And then Thing in the Ice flips right away, returns all non-horror creatures to their owner's hands, and then you have a 7/8 right away. Without any of this stuff going on, you can also have Solemnity on the battlefield and use Cauldron of Souls to give your creatures persist. So if you were to have a sack outlet and Solemnity, but not Broodmoth, Clackbridge Troll, or Massacre Worm, but you did have Cauldron of Souls, you can give any of these enter the battlefield effects persist and sacrifice them. So all these here have enter the battlefield effects. Garth, kind of, you need a haste enabler, which is in the deck. There is one. Slaughter Specialist will, at the very least, give all your opponents a 1/1. a bunch of 1/1s, Skullwinders, and enter the battlefield effect. So that's why I kind of leaned into the blink, enter the battlefield effect things, because Skullwinder does say enter the battlefield on it. So there's a Soul Herder in here. White Plume Adventure is a fun one to blink. Get the initiative. I included some fun mechanics that I just would like to see in any Commander game, initiative, and there is Palace Jailer, which I didn't put into the enter the battlefield effect, but it does have one. So you can change your Palace Jailer target attributes for card draw, Author of Shadows, which is a sweet card, and Graveyard, and access Graveyard Hate. Then Clackbridge gives some goats. Avatar of Growth can ramp everyone. Magister of Worth, you can blink that and get to choose again whether to use it as a board wipe or reanimation effect. Blinking Massacre Worm, I think, is really good if you're just sort of doing this, give your opponents little creatures here and there, and you can blink Massacre Worm every turn and blink give them a creature every turn. That could do it pretty quickly. Just Hunted Phantasm, Soul Herder. Hunted Phantasm, say Yorion, and Massacre Worm does 10 damage to one player, so not too bad. Otherwise, you can just be drawing cards or doing any of that with Panharmonicon. Then, of course, speeds things up quite well. Samut Voice of Dissent is our haste enabler. It gives our creatures haste and allows us to untap a creature, so I think that goes pretty well with Garth. The original suggestion was Rhythm of the Wilds, but Riot doesn't work very well with Solemnity, so I changed it to Samut, and it also works well with untapping. Otherwise, not that many reasons to have haste, just Lauren, Tangle Florahedron, Vizier, but then also having a 20/20 Flying Indestructible with haste is better. Thinking the Eye is better with haste. So haste is just kind of nice, I suppose. But definitely good with Garth. Can help make our Garth a little better if we need it. And then I have Vizier of Tumbling Sands in here. I think that's enough targets. I think just the Dowsing Dagger, Lost Veil, maybe Arcane Signet. And then the most fun thing, I think, though, and why Vizier of Tumbling Sands is in the deck is to, I think with Wishclaw Talisman, it says activate this ability only during your turn, but it doesn't say sorcery speed. So I think you have a moment, this comma right here, where you can pay one, tap it, remove a wish counter from Wishclaw Talisman, : So then I think you have a moment to respond with Vizier of Tumbling Sands to untap the Wishclaw Talisman, pay one, and tap it again. And this whole ability will be on the stack twice, I think. So if you also had Samut and you had enough mana to, like, one white source to untap the Vizier, then you could, I think, tap the Vizier to untap the Wishclaw Talisman again, pay another white, and then and then do the whole effect again. I don't know if that works. I think it works because you should be able to do that all at instant speed. So I want to know if you can use all three wishes for yourself, and that's the way I think you could do it. It makes me happy imagining that's possible. It might not be possible. We'll have to find out one way or another. And then the alternate win con. This is the leftover from making your opponents block. Nessian Boar says, all creatures able to block Nessian Boar do so. Whenever a Nessian Boar becomes blocked by a creature, that creature's controller draws a card. So if, for instance, your opponents have infinite goats and not much less than that, then Nessian Boar can draw their whole deck, and force them to draw a card while they have no cards in their library, which would mill them out. And then finally, we get down to the checklist. The deck hits the checklist pretty close without really trying, which is true. Didn't make the deck around the checklist, just made all the cuts and things, and then did the checklist. The one thing I did make sure to hit was ramp at the end. There wasn't enough ramp in the deck, so Nature's Lore, 3 visits, make the cut. Veteran Explorer, super fringe ramp, not very reliable, not very good because it ramps everybody, but that's just sort of the way this deck works. And Nature's Lore, 3 visits, also warp the mana. We hit the mana really close, so this is what the mana in the deck breaks down to, and these are sources that can tap for that color of mana. So it hits it pretty close. There's a lot of triomes. There's a few more green forests, specifically forests, in the deck. So the mana base, I think hits it pretty close. Maybe a little short on black mana, but a lot of the green mana also taps for black mana, I guess. I don't know. That's not really what the numbers show, but that's what it's hoping for, that we have more ways to find green mana with Nature's Lore and 3 visits. So I'm hoping that we'd be able to find the triomes with the Nature's Lore 3 visits, and that is good, hopefully good enough. And then Tempt with Discovery also lets you get any land, and Tempt lets you get any land, and then Arcane Signet, I guess, taps for any color, so hopefully we see that. There's, I guess, 9 sources of card draw. The card draw is all super janky and Secret Rendezvous-esque, and passes to the opponent and lets everybody draw. So I tried not to be too group hug-esque with the deck, because I think when you really lean into group hug, it makes for sort of not, quote-unquote, not real Commander games, or not real games, because it's just too much free value for everyone. But I think this is very Secret Rendezvous-esque card draw, interactive card draw, enter the battlefield effect card draw, like Atrice, and other political things like Mathis. I think Secret Rendezvous is pretty political. And then Seagate Restoration has just a big one. Just 2 targeted removals. Generous Gift can hit anything. Doesn't tie to Massacre Worm, so that'll be pretty funny. And then Fractured Identity as just another thing that gives things to everyone, except for the one person, of course. I did consider having Archfiend of the Dross as a new inclusion in here with Solemnity, Archfiend of the Dross, and Fractured Identity. You can cast your Archfiend. It will have no counters on it. You can Fractured Identity your Archfiend, give it to everyone else. With Solemnity, it doesn't get counters, and it just passes through everyone's upkeep. They all die. You don't even have one anymore because you Fractured Identity'd it. But that's super risky. So, and just a ridiculous combo, which we're already trying to win with silly combos. So I didn't put it in there, but it could go in. So then board wipes, there's the Magister of Worship, which isn't really a real board wipe. Meat Hook Massacre, which can be a real board wipe, sort of. And then the Massacre Worm kind of can clear things off the board, but you know. Skullwinder, we have Living Death, which can act as a form of Blink and Graveyard Recursion and Blink, Graveyard Recursion, and Graveyard Hate. I don't know why I put Living End as one of the pictures there. That's not right. Living Death is the card that's in the deck. And then The surprise I win card, I suppose, could be Nessian Boar, but I think also Eerie Interlude might be able to, and the other blink spells, you might be able to blink Massacre Worm and something else enough times to sort of make a win out of it. So the only non-bow is Wish Claw with Solemnity, then it has no wish counters, and then it's just a 3-mana artifact that does nothing, I think. Yeah, so that doesn't work. You gotta Wish Claw for the Solemnity, that's the idea. Anyways, and then Nessian Boar, really, really silly card, but I wanted to include it. I want to see someone draw every card in their deck due to 99 goats having to block a Nessian Boar. I included some of the cuts and some of the things that are on Moto. There's a lot more that weren't on Moto that look fun. A lot from the Streets of New Capenna commander decks that are on Moto that would be fun in this deck in paper, but it's just a very silly deck. Skullwinder Tribal. When I think of Commnader Clash and MTG Goldfish, I think of Skullwinder and Secret Rendezvous. So this is the Skullwinder Secret Rendezvous Tribal deck. And just a quick shout out at the end here. If anyone listening that got all the way to the end wants to collaborate on a deck for viewer submitted week in the future, just let me know. Whenever they announce viewer submitted week, we can brew up a deck, something fun like this, and maybe it'll get picked one of these times. It's $758 in paper. I had all the Abu duels, the original dual lands in here, and it was over $5,000, which I don't think reflects the nature of the deck. And it's 5 colors, so I think the Triumphs ended up being better. I did keep all of the fetch lands, so there should be enough between the fetches, shocks, and Triumphs to get what you need when you need it, I hope. And then 232 tickets. Everything is on Moto now, thankfully. That's in the deck. I had to cut a lot of things that weren't on Moto, so everything's on Moto. For some reason, the Hungry Links is 5 tickets, which is kind of a lot. White Plume Adventure, 7 tickets for Legacy. Slicer, of course, 8 tickets. Expensive card on Moto. The Avatar of Growth is just in Treasure Chest, so it's 6 tickets. So yeah, some of the things. Amaria's Call is 23 tickets. So some of these harder to get on Moto cards, Coveted Jewel only in Treasure Chests. So yeah, some of these cards are expensive on Moto. The fetch lands are pretty expensive on Moto. And then tabletop prices, Meat Hook Massacre, the land base is really expensive still, but nothing compared to with the Alpha Beta Unlimited lands. And MDFCs are expensive, but other than that, I guess Hungry Links is $8 in paper too. A little silly. I think it's cool that Garth One Eye is only 89 cents, so that's why I included some Garth synergies. It's a fun commander, I think, and only 89 cents, so it'd be really fun to brew. I think a Garth One Eye sort of infinite tap and untap deck or something like that would be really fun. But for now, yeah, that's the deck, and we'll see you in the next episode of the MTG Homerow Podcast. I'm gonna go over my Gates deck. That's my plan. Write an article for the Gates deck, and an article for this deck, I think is just going to be the deck primer and description. I'm not gonna post one on Substack, but you can check out the MTG Homerow Substack on mtghomerow.substack.com, and then follow on Instagram and Twitter at MTG Homerow. Thank you for listening. Good luck to everyone who submitted for viewer submitted week. This is always a super fun week for Commnader Clash. Clash on.